All right, welcome to Unit 2. In Unit 2, we're going to be taking a look at the branches of government. We're going to go through 4 policy-making institutions, and we're going to get started today with Congress. So we're going to start to take a look at the different aspects of Congress. What we want to do today is describe different aspects of the job of a congressman, and from there, we'll be able to explain why a congressman's job is so difficult, why they have competing motivations, and we say that their job has a dual nature, trying to look at all the different groups that a congressman is expected to please. Before we get into modern Congress, the first thing we have to do when we're taking a look at a branch of government is let's go straight to the Constitution and see what the Constitution has to say about the branch. And before we get to the Constitution itself, we're going to take a quick look at what Congress was like under the Articles of Confederation. So, a little bit of a review here. You guys will remember this stuff from Unit 1. Congress, the only branch of government under the Articles of Confederation. The members of Congress would get together and choose a president. So the president was not independent from Congress. Inside Congress, each state had equal representation regardless of size. So they sent different people to represent the state in Congress, but each state got one vote in Congress. And this is the only body of the federal government. So when we take a look at the Constitution itself, we can tell a lot about what the framers intended for Congress because of what they say about it. First thing, it's kind of obvious here, but this is Article 1. So this is the first thing that the framers sat down and tried to solve. They came up with a plan for the legislature. If you were to look at the Constitution on paper, you'll see that Article 1 is much longer than Article 2 or Article 3. In your textbook, Article 1 takes up more than a whole page of textbook. It also has a lot more specific things to say in Article 1. This comes from the fact that a Congress did exist under the Articles of Confederation. So the framers have an idea of what they want Congress to do. They give Congress lots of specific powers. And they create some of those clauses that we've talked about before that allow Congress's powers to expand, like the Commerce Clause and the Necessary and Proper Clause. So we can tell that the framers intended this to be the most powerful part of the government. They put it first. They had a lot to say about it, and they gave it room to expand its powers to make policy. So finally, let's take a look at what Article 1 says. The first thing it says that Congress is bicameral, meaning that 2 houses. So we have a House of Representatives and we have a Senate. The House of Representatives is made to represent the people. So the people are represented equally by being divided up into districts of equal size. And the Senate represents the states. The Senate is meant to represent the states equally. And so each state has an equal number of representatives and votes in the Senate. Article 1 tells us that Congress has legislative power, meaning that its role is to create policy for the national government and for the country. We go a little further into Article 1. It's going to give us the formal qualifications for being a member of Congress. So here it sets up some standards that people have to meet in order to be able to win office in the House or the Senate. They're a little bit different for each house, and we'll talk about these later. Congress has a lot of power to regulate the economy here. So this is directly responding to problems with the Articles of Confederation. We want to make sure that this Congress has expansive powers and that they're able to kind of serve a role in economic planning for the country. The only section we'll ever talk about is Article 1, Section 8. And this is where we find the enumerated powers of Congress. So this is just a list. It looks like a bullet point list of 17 or so specific powers of Congress that go from, levy taxes, coin money, declare war, to even a little more obscure stuff like fight piracy and support the arts and sciences. Article 1 also includes specific limits on Congress's power. And these are things that you remember back from Unit 1. So Congress cannot suspend the writ of habeas corpus or pass bills of attainder. Congress cannot pass ex post facto laws, things like that. So there are a lot of powers specifically given to Congress in Article 1, and there's also a lot of clear limits on the powers of Congress in Article 1. All right, the next thing we want to do today is we want to take a look at bicameralism. We want to figure out why it is important that there are two houses of Congress here. So we won't really talk about the differences between the House and the Senate, but just the idea of having separate houses inside Congress. And we'll look at the House and Senate later this week. So, a lot of the reason that we have a bicameral Congress is because that's what the framers were used to. The British government has a bicameral legislature. The Parliament in Britain has a House of Commons and a House of Lords. So, this is basically copied here in the United States with our Congress. So, the lower house in Britain would be the House of Commons, and it represents the masses, the people. The upper house represents the special interests. This would be the House of Lords. And so the United States government, when they designed it, basically creates this same setup. Represent the masses in the House of Representatives, represent special interests, being the states in the Senate. Also, most of the state governments at the time, the colonies, had set up bicameral legislatures on their own. So most of the state governments had a two-house model that they used for lawmaking. And the framers knew this. The framers were familiar with the British Parliament. They are familiar with the various state governments that they come from. And the framers knew that this two-house model works. It helps to balance the interests of the masses or the majority and balance those interests against the interests of the elites. Another little bit of review here, you know that we have a two-house Congress because it's the result of a compromise between the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. Hopefully this is just stuck in your brain for good already. But if you remember the Virginia plan, they wanted the legislature based on the population, so the larger states would have more votes. The New Jersey plan wanted each state represented equally. The only way that this plan would pass and the Constitution would be ratified would be for big states and small states to both be satisfied here. So to get to that 3/4 threshold, the Great Compromise or the Connecticut Compromise combined these two plans and created a two-house Congress in order to ratify the Constitution. Another important aspect of bicameralism is that it creates an additional separation of powers. This helps to limit the power of the legislature and limit the power of the government overall. Both houses, the House and the Senate, have to agree in order to pass a law. So this creates the first of our veto points. If the House passes a law and the Senate does not like the law, then the law is dead. So this serves to limit the lawmaking power of Congress here. Each of these houses can check the other house and keep it from becoming too powerful. So if the House is trying to pass policies that the Senate thinks are dangerous, then the Senate just does not ever have to pass those policies and they don't get as far as the president to be turned into law. We talked about this before already as well, but each house has unique powers that the other house doesn't have. And so the design of Congress here creates different jobs for the House and the Senate based on their makeup. So exploring this separation of powers a little, the House was the only part of the government that was directly elected by the people. So the House was meant to serve the people. The Senate was not elected, but was appointed by the state legislatures. So it was not designed to serve the people, it was designed to serve the interest of the states. This is designed to limit the power that the people would have to control the legislature. So this government is very specifically designed to make sure that the people don't just get their way all the time. The majorities of the population can't control the lawmaking, but that these houses can prevent each other from doing things. And in particular, the Senate is designed to prevent the House from only looking at the most popular policies. So this is still true to a degree today, even though the Senate is elected. Because of the way the Senate is elected, it still serves as a check on majority interests. You could easily pass popular policies in the House of Representatives because the people are represented equally. And so the more popular something is, the more likely it is to pass. But in the Senate, since each state is limited to two votes, it's possible for minority interests, particularly like we talked about, rural interests, can have voting majorities in the Senate, even though that's not where the people live. So this way, the Senate serves to prevent the House from facilitating that tyranny of the majority that we were so concerned about in Unit 1. And then because of the way these are set up, they still are pretty different today. So since the House represents the people equally, it tends to be a little more extreme. We'll have our most liberal congressmen and our most conservative congressmen probably most likely to be elected in the House because the House they are elected from small districts, and these districts can tend to be very similar inside their own borders. So, for example, Memphis, just the city limits of Memphis is a district in Congress. And so it creates a district that is 100% urban and is very diverse and has overwhelmingly liberal voters. And they elect a pretty liberal congressman. Meanwhile, we can go out to other districts that are in more rural parts of Tennessee, like District 7 or even most of District 8. These serve overwhelmingly rural areas. And so the voters are 100% rural. They are way less diverse. They are way more likely to be, they're overwhelmingly conservative voters. And so they're more likely to elect an overwhelmingly conservative representative. So we'll have very liberal people in the House and very conservative people in the House. But when we get to the Senate, in order to win your seat in the Senate, you have to be more moderate. You have to find a way to appeal to both of these districts. So, Senate candidates have to appeal to cities and rural areas. They have to find ways to win over liberal and conservative voters. And so, they're much more likely to try to aim to be moderate, aim for those voters in the middle so that they can win those seats. And so, the Senate ends up having has 100 members in the Senate that tend to be more moderate than the people that we'll find elected in the House. The other thing about the Senate is that their terms are very long. They have 6 year terms. So once they get elected, they're not constantly trying to please the people every single day. That is what the House has to do. The House gets elected every 2 years, so they're constantly having to make sure that they make the people happy. But the Senate, once you get elected, you've got 5 years without having to worry about an election. So the senators are less likely to try to constantly please the people. And in this way, the Senate is built and designed to prevent the House from only focusing on and passing majority popular legislation. And so this serves as another check on the power of the lawmaking body here. Okay, so this is mostly just what the Constitution tells us. This is about the what how Article 1 designs Congress and how the bicameral body serves to limit itself. So now we're going to move on and focus a little more on what a congressman's job is like today.